The CBD industry is complicated. The cannabis industry is complicated. What's even more complicated is the legal laws around these. My next guest will not only talk about the legalities of cannabis and CBD, but also the new and up-and-coming psilocybin and psychedelic medication now going through FDA approval. So you won't want to miss this one. Stay tuned. Let me first start out by saying thank you to Podcast Powertrain for helping produce my show. These are the guys you need behind you if you're looking to start your podcast. Also, I'd like to thank
Powered by Riverside FM.
That's right. Our show is powered by Riverside FM, one of the best platforms to actually have a podcast on. So I'm going to have some links at the end of the show or in the show notes. Check them out. These are the two people that you need to get with to make your podcast top 100.
The good dudes grow. We help you understand the benefits. With CBD and cannabis, yeah. The good dudes grow. We remove the fear of the unknown by giving you all the facts. The good dudes grow. We bring the unbiased content from opposing views to give you nothing but the facts. I welcome you to the show. The good dudes grow.
Welcome back to Good Dudes Grow. I'm your host, Gary Roberts, and today's show we have Mr. Sean Hardwick, a regulatory analyst at Mr. Cannabis Law. He's also one of the guys that drafted the Florida HB 549 bill, which is the psychedelic bill, which is trying to get psychedelics legalized in the state of Florida. With almost 2 years in the regulated cannabis industry, he has drafted over 17 marijuana state license and applications, business plans, and operating procedures for dispensaries, cultivation, and manufacturing facilities in California, Illinois, Massachusetts, Missouri, New Jersey, and Utah. In the hemp industry, Sean assists clients to obtain hemp licenses and maintain compliance with federal and state regulations. Sean, welcome to the show. I think the coolest thing is that I've never had really an attorney with all, I guess I could say, your background in regulatory stuff with all the cannabis and everything else. And a lot of people ask some questions. They go online, they get bad information and stuff. So I'm glad you're on the show. But you didn't start out being an attorney and say, hey, listen, did you start, or maybe you did. Did you start out saying, hey, I'm going to be a cannabis attorney when you decided to go to school? How did you get started in the industry?
Well, thanks, Gary, for having me on, first of all. And no, I didn't come to law school thinking that I was going to be a cannabis attorney. So when I started law school, I thought I was going to go into real estate, actually. During my undergrad at the University of Central Florida, I did a couple of internships in commercial real estate. The first one was for a brokerage group that bought and sold grocery-anchored shopping centers. So it's a unique part of the commercial market. And then the second job was with a real estate investment fund that invested in mobile home parks. So again, it was another unique part of the industry. So I came to law school thinking that I wanted to do real estate development because I really like the mixed use real estate, the retail and bottom and living up top. I really like that concept.
Which is really starting to grow in South Florida.
Yeah,
there's nowhere to grow outward. We only can go upward.
Yeah, absolutely. So I came to law school thinking I wanted to do that. And everybody who came in when we were doing our introductory things said they wanted to do real estate. And it's like literally every single person that I talked to. And so, I mean, I love competition, but I did not want to compete against like every single person I was going to school with. So I'm like, all right, I wanted to, figure out what else I wanted to do. So my roommate and I actually founded the White Collar Crime Society at our school. And I thought that that's what I was going to do, is something like white collar criminal defense or something like that. And so that's the route I was going on. We had our internships lined up at the state attorney's office in Broward County. He ended up doing it, but like probably a month before we were supposed to start, I saw a post for a position for a cannabis writer. And I'm like, might as well apply for it. Sounds a little bit more interesting than the state attorney's office. So I applied for it, got it. And what the company was, it's called Cannabis Business Growth. It's located out of Boca Raton, Florida. And so what she does is marijuana applications, so marijuana state license applications. So I spent several months doing several applications in like Utah, California, Missouri, New Jersey, and a bunch of other states. So that's how I got into the industry. It was a non-legal job. And then several months later, I connected with my boss, Dustin Robinson, who is the founding partner of Mr. Cannabis Law. And so I joined his team shortly thereafter.
That's cool. That's cool because I keep telling everybody else, Florida's a little stricter with the cannabis getting their licenses than actually all the other states. Am I correct? Because I know Florida has a huge, you got to jump through a lot of hoops in Florida before you can actually open a cannabis plant, a cannabis facility in Florida, correct?
Yeah, so Florida is a very interesting state. The requirement is that it's vertically integrated, which means that every licensee has to conduct every single step of the supply chain. So they have to grow, they have to create the product if you're creating an edible or any sort of vaporizer cartridge. They have to sell it and they deliver it. And on top of that, there's only 22 licenses right now and no more being awarded right now. There's actually a development this week that they will be releasing some licenses relatively shortly, but as of right now, there's only 22 licenses and that's it. So to get into the market, you have to buy a license.
And Florida is not cheap compared. I think the last two in January at the end of the year, they sold, I think one sold for 54 million and the other one sold for 48 million. It's not cheap in Florida.
It's right in that ballpark. Yeah, the license is worth that much. And again, because you have to do every single step of the process, right? So it takes a multi-state operator with lots of capital behind them and to put into the investment to build out that framework. It costs a lot of money. And on top of that, the license allows you to have unlimited number of retail stores. So in most states, you need one license for one retail store. But in Florida, you can have as many as you want. So that
Right.
one license can get you, as many dispensaries as you can afford.
And if I'm not wrong, I may be wrong, but if I read correctly, I think Florida just passed legislation that other growers from other states cannot come into Florida as of yet. They want the license to be in Florida. Is that correct, or did I read that wrong?
That I don't know of. Basically, I mean, any company any company that's operating in any state, you have to create your product and sell the product in the state. There is no interstate sales or transfer of marijuana. But we do have companies down here that have licensed, with companies outside of the state, and those people have come in to help with with cultivation, production, stuff like that. But that's allowed again because they're in the state and just keeping the product inside of the state.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Now on to hemp, which is pretty interesting because Florida again is a little bit above and beyond every other state that's out there. They're kind of like leading the way in the hemp, the way they're actually making everything work with hemp. What's the difference between Florida and most states that you see?
Florida, I think, is very open to hemp. They want to see hemp succeed, I think, in comparison to a lot of other states. So the best example of this is there's been a huge increase in demand for Delta 8 THC, which I'll just do a little bit of background in case your listeners don't know. Delta 8 THC is another cannabinoid that is found in the cannabis plant. The cannabis plant has over 100 different types of cannabinoids. And so what a lot of producers are doing is they're taking hemp-derived CBD, which tests below 0.3% Delta 9 THC, and going through an isomerization process. Sorry, chemistry is not my thing. Which basically converts the CBD into Delta 8 THC, which was already naturally found in that cannabis plant. And the Delta 8 THC contains less than 0.3% Delta 9 THC, so it's federally legal under the 2018 Farm Bill. That's why it's gaining so much traction. And it has about 2/3 of the psychoactive potency of Delta 9 THC. So it's basically a legal way to get high. And how this relates to Florida is a lot of states, because of that, are starting to ban Delta 8 THC because, again, it is a legal way to get high. But Florida has already come out and said, as long as the hemp product has less than 0.3% total THC, which is basically defined as Delta 9 THC, then the then the product is legal and will not be removed from the shelves.
Which is great because I have my company create some Delta 8 products, and it's been beneficial for surprisingly to me to a lot of older people to help them sleep and actually recover faster, because that's what Delta 8 basically is. It's a higher analgesic, and it's also a great sleep aid. So it kind of helps that once you find the right dosage. Again, you can. The biggest thing about Delta 8 and THC is dosage wise, because you're just not going to go out and eat a whole chocolate bar of it, because it's not going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
start really slow. But do you see how can I say it? Do you see it having issues with the marijuana industry in Florida? Because I keep reading around that a lot of the cultivators are getting scared because everybody's doing Delta 8. Or is Florida pretty good because they like both parts of the plant?
Yeah, I think Florida, and I think a lot of states, you're going to see the division of both. You have the people who really like their marijuana products. And especially in Florida, you have to, obviously it's a medical state, so you have to go get your license. So anyone who's really desiring to go get marijuana will go through those steps, to get their medical license. But a lot of people do like Delta 8 THC, the fact that they don't have to get a medical license to, take medicine that works for them. And a lot of people, I'm sure you've heard this too, that they actually prefer Delta 8 THC to Delta 9 because it's a little less anxious to some people. So I think there's always going to be the separation of both, the demand for both. But my personal opinion, I think marijuana will always be a little bit more popular, more in demand. But I do think there's always going to be some sort of market for a Delta 8 THC because so many people already love it and already prefer, or some people already prefer it to Delta 9 THC and marijuana products.
Right. With your ear to the ground, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Do you see Florida ever making it recreational or adult use, or they like it the way it's being run right now?
Well, it's interesting. The people of Florida definitely want to see adult use in Florida, but the legislation sees it another way. I thought that we were going to have, at least one of the ballot initiatives on for the 2022 election, but recently, both of them, there were two of them, Make It Legal Florida and Sensible, were both deemed, misleading, because both ballot initiatives didn't contain the fact that if the law went into effect, that marijuana would remain a Schedule I controlled substance under federal law. And that was the same problem that South Dakota ran into with their ballot initiative that voters passed back in November. So because of that, the signature collecting process has to start completely over. And so basically there's not really a shot to see it for the 2022 election. So hopefully we'll see it for the 2024 election coming up. But as far as the legislature goes, there's plenty of bills for adult use, for an adult use market in Florida, but none of them advanced last session. The only marijuana bill that did advance was House Bill 1455, which was to place a limit, a THC cap on medical marijuana products, which I actually spoke against a couple of times. But that seems to be the only legislation that's progressing. So it's going to have to be up to the people to have to collect enough ballot signatures to get the initiative on the ballot for 2024.
Yes. So those who are listening don't understand what he just said. Basically, they're putting a cap for those who have the medical license to go buy an amount of medical marijuana they want. The problem with that is that, some people need the higher amount than what they're actually allowing to get, which causes a little bit of issue if you have some medical problems that you deem necessary. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. I mean, so the cap was to put smokable flower at 10% THC cap. And basically everything else, so your vaporizer cartridges and stuff like that, at a 60% cap. And so, I mean, I don't know. I use smokable marijuana, and most of the stuff that I use is between 15 and 25%. So pushing someone down below 10%, first of all, forces cultivators to mess with their genetics to make a less potent and less desirable product. And two, it takes away the medicinal benefits that many people are getting. my mom actually works at a dispensary in Fort Pierce, and she's telling me about some of the clients that come in, and a lot of these clients need really high THC products, such as concentrates and RSOs and stuff like that have higher percentage of THC. And these aren't just people looking to get high. These are older people, and these are people who have had traumas and stuff like that. And they just need a higher THC because they've been using this medicine for so long, but it works for them and it helps them. And so the THC caps on these products is going to be detrimental to this market and to the over 500,000 patients across Florida.
Not only the patients, but it's also going to be detrimental to what the state of Florida is trying to do, because what that ends up pushing the illegal growers to grow, and now these patients have to go to them maybe and don't know what they're getting, and now we have this battle of like, see, it was never good in the first place, and it just causes big headaches. I see.
Absolutely.
It's my own personal opinion, but I'm not allowed to use the stuff as a firefighter. But I want to get into that. Here's the thing that I'm trying to do, and one of the main reasons I got the podcast was basically to educate basically my higher up or administration or my cities that I talk with, is that we're not looking to use basically cannabis as a get high substance or remove the drug testing. We want the ability to use the lower THC, higher CBD that allows us basically to sleep, make us a couple pain stuff, and maybe even the Delta 8 that's legal under state law. But if we get popped using that stuff, basically we're screwed, and they'll call it basically lose our job or our complete retirement. Do we see anything in the state legislation that we can cover that? Because I do know, though doing my research, I have created my own policy that it's all about funding for fire departments and everything else. They're worried about losing their grant funding or their workman's compensation, but yet they already have a drug policy in place according to the 1988 drug law, which basically states they have to have a policy in place for Schedule 1 through 5 drugs, which they have right now. I don't understand why they just can't slip the cannabis in there with the opioids or the Xanax and everything else that's already there.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Your thoughts on that one?
I have no idea about that one. My knowledge.
Do you see anything? Because I know that in the state legislature, they just had 2 bills allowing public employees to actually use, I think, cannabis or THC, and that didn't pass, of course. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Do you see anything coming in where they're going to allow state employees, allow them to use at least the low dosage or anything? Do you see anything happening?
I mean,
can you protect me if I get popped?
Yeah, I haven't personally seen any legislation about about any sort of changes, but I know there is obviously a lot of support in the law enforcement community and any sort of first responders or any sort of governmental jobs. Because as you know, any sort of governmental employee is subject to a drug test, and so if you're using a hemp-derived CBD, who knows, somehow, some way, THC could appear in that drug test, and the people who are conducting the drug tests are in no position to determine where that THC or CBD came from. So you can be taking a federally legal product and potentially still fail your drug test, especially with a Delta 8 THC product. If you take Delta 8 THC product, you're almost guaranteed to fail your drug test, depending on how close to the drug test that you take it, because that will appear as THC to the drug testing company. And again, they're not in a position to say that THC is from Delta 8, which is federally legal. They're just going to see THC and either deny you, or depending on when you have that test, face sanctions or get fired.
Right. So here's go ahead.
But I was just saying, I haven't seen any legislation to change that, but I do know there is a ton of support for it, and that is something we're going to be working towards.
Well, that's the biggest thing. That's the next thing for my next question for you. And this is a key, and I wanted to ask you about. So education on what products to take, how to take them, and where to find them is key to letting most, especially those in government issues or any job that gets drug tested. That's the biggest key. What do you think about education? Is that the key to actually changing everybody's mind nowadays?
Absolutely. Education is the absolute key. Well, what I've noticed being in this industry for a couple of years now is that the people who are not in this industry full time, there's such a huge knowledge gap. Most people in society have such a limited knowledge of cannabis. A lot of people can't even differentiate between marijuana and hemp. A lot of people just don't have an understanding, especially on the governmental level. So I think getting in the ears of every single policymaker, whether it's a legislator, or even on the executive level, just the heads of every single governmental branch, I think just the more support and the more support they hear from the public, that's how we're going to make these changes.
Why do you feel everybody's so afraid of cannabis? So why is it so I know it's a stigma still, but why do you think it's everybody just as soon as they hear the word, and I know people are changing the word from marijuana to cannabis because as soon as they hear marijuana, everybody goes, "Oh my God," and they start freaking out. But if you say cannabis, it's not that they don't get that excited. Mm-hmm. So why is it?
I think the stigma is that, I mean, you still have the lazy stoner stigma, as soon as you take it, you're going to be lazy, you're going to be unproductive, or that people are going to take it and drive around and create a more dangerous society. I think it all revolves around the fact that Delta-9 is sort of a psychoactive stimulant in a sense. So I mean, it's not that people shouldn't be concerned about it. It's that, as you and I know, people who use cannabis usually use it responsibly, just like people would use, alcohol, for example. And so I think, there's been this long-standing history with alcohol, and there's already this sort of acceptance with it. But cannabis is relatively new, even though it's been in our existence for thousands of years, and even in the United States history up until the 50s and when it was officially outlawed in the 70s. But it's starting to make a comeback. It's starting to become, more mainstream in society, especially as we see, hemp-derived CBD products more accepted. I think we're going to see a lot more acceptance, especially as we have a multi-billion-dollar national industry that, eventually you can't ignore.
Right, exactly. And I agree with you 100%. The other interesting thing I wanted to ask you, and I saw this on your bio and stuff, is that the cannabis and hemp is I see it as opening the door to other plant-based medicine like psychedelics. And a lot of people don't know about all that stuff and the research that's going on that for PTSD, concussion, everything else. But you've done a little bit of stuff in the legal aspect with that. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've done at Mr. Cannabis Law is we drafted House Bill 549, which is the first legalization bill for psilocybin and other entheogenic plants in Florida. So it would create a legal market to produce psilocybin products, have them administered at a research or at a medical center with trained professionals, and everything would be very regulated. But on a broader note, Oregon's the only state that has successfully passed legislation to create a legalization market. And then Washington, D.C. Decriminalized psilocybin as well. And these psychedelic substances are going, in contrast to the cannabis, are going through the FDA process. So they're basically going through as if it was a pharmaceutical drug. So the obvious ketamine is already a passed drug. It's a Schedule III controlled substances. So you see ketamine clinics popping up every now and then, and they're technically federally legal. They're used. Ketamine is used for very limited purposes, and they've shown promises for treating addiction and other sorts of traumas. Another one the one that's gained the most traction, past that's in phase 3 is MDMA, which is also known as ecstasy, and that's shown that it helps with PTSD and treatment-resistant depression and all those sorts of things. So again, that's in phase 3 development, which is the sort of the last phase to becoming an accepted substance under the FDA. So soon we're going to see medical centers offering MDMA treatments. And then obviously another exciting substance that I'm very passionate about, and a lot of people are, is psilocybin. And that's in phase 2 development. So that, right behind phase 3. So we still have a couple years of studies left on that. But it's actually received a breakthrough designation, which means that the FDA is acknowledging the fact that psilocybin is treating major depressive disorder greater than a lot of other substances for that treatment. So it's actually being fast-tracked right now to receiving approval. And then we have LSD, which is in phase 2, DMT, which is in phase 1, and then mescaline and ayahuasca are also in phase 1, and the combination of MDMA and LSD, also known as candy flipping, is in phase 1. And again, these are all for treating PTSD, trauma, anxiety, and addiction, and a lot of them are showing real promise.
Yeah, I started researching of it. My daughter died of an opiate overdose on her 27th birthday, unfortunately, and I started. That's how I got into the old. Yeah, thank you. That's how I got into the cannabis and CBD research in the first place. As soon as she passed, I went, okay, let's figure out how we can help firefighters and other addictions. And I started slowly realizing that, these other stuff, these psilocybins and other stuff can actually help be beneficial too. But I never knew that they were actually going through an FDA process to actually get research. And we actually created a nonprofit called PromisesRecovery.com. And we're talking with an organization actually in Canada and in South Florida to actually build a rehab facility and research facility in the same complex. So we could use all plant medicine on what you just said, depression, PTSD, and addiction. So
that's incredible.
I'm amazed at when you tell people this. He goes, I'm thinking about using LSD in this addiction process.
Yeah,
like, so what? No, it's FDA. It's going to be FDA approved. No, it ain't. I'm like, oh yeah, it is. You got to check it out. And these people's eyes just think you're crazy, and then you tell them it's going through an FDA process, and they can't believe it.
Yeah.
So that's fabulous to hear.
And what's kind of funny too is, like, in a weird sort of way, LSD and MDMA and psilocybin are all kind of more legitimate in the eyes of the federal government than cannabis, even though there's obviously a $25 billion, plus marijuana market and however much in hemp. So it's kind of interesting.
It's kind of totally flip flopped. It's funny because I talked to a rugby player out in Canada, an international rugby player, and he's actually looking at creating a pre-workout with LSD. And I'm like, you serious? He's like, yeah, it's like one of the best pre-workouts. And I'm like,
that's incredible.
I'm like, that is just completely blown my mind. So yeah, that's pretty funny. If you, I ask a lot of people this every once, your younger self, if you could give yourself advice, or what would you say when you first started, or what would you tell yourself?
I would say that you can't plan, right? Because like I said, obviously how I started the show, obviously I didn't plan to get into cannabis law. I've always been a planner. When I was younger, I was going to be a stockbroker. That I was going to go into real estate law. I was going to do this and that. But you can't plan. I'm a very religious person. I'm a Christian guy, and so I think God, if you trust in God, He will lead you exactly to where you need to go. And so that's exactly what I would tell my younger self: trust in the process.
Well said. Well said. If people needed to reach out to you, and so in case they needed anything to actually file paperwork to get licensing or anything else, how could they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is Mr. Cannabis Law. Across all of our socials, it's Mr. Cannabis Law. It's kind of hard not to find us. Our nonprofit is Mr. Psychedelic Law. And then my boss, Dustin, our founding partner, he started Eater Investments. So if anyone's invested in or interested in investing in early stage psychedelic companies, he does that. And so again, contact me. My email is shardwick@mrcannabislaw.com. And again, you can just go to our website, mrcannabislaw.com, and you can easily get in contact with any of us there.
Perfect. I'm going to drop all those in the show notes, so this way at least they have it, and this they know they don't have to try and remember it. They can actually just look at it, click on it, and send you something. Sean, I appreciate you coming on my show. Fabulous. I got a lot of questions I want answered. I hope the audience got some questions, some good answers and questions out of it too. And I will let you go and enjoy your weekend. And I'll definitely talk soon because I'm more interested in the psilocybin stuff and everything else. So definitely keep in touch with that.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, Gary. And thank you for all that you've done and bringing awareness to this plant and trying to educate, especially firefighters and the public at large. Thank you for what you've done.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Sean, have a great day, my friend.
All right, you as well.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for listening to the show. And like I said at the beginning of the show, I'll have some links for you. So if you're interested in starting your podcast yourself, one of the best places to go is Podcast Powertrain. Right now, they're doing an amazing offer for all their course material. If you want to actually help get your show ranked, all you got to do is go to gooddudesgrow.com/powertrain and you'll get all the information there. Also, if you're looking for a platform, not sure which platform to use to record your show on, Riverside FM is the one we use. You can also go to gooddudesgrow.com/Riverside. Check them out and you will not be disappointed. Again, thank you for listening to the show and we will see you. Well, we won't see you, but we'll get with you next week. You guys have a great week.
If you're still listening to this, that means you gained some type of value. So what we need you to do is leave a review and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of The Good Dudes Grow.